Well, all right, everybody. This is episode number 92 of Hobby Hotline. It is October 23rd, Saturday morning. I just woke up. These guys have been up for a while. We got Chris, we got Rich. What's going on this morning, gentlemen? Rich,
had a little bit of some technical difficulties this morning.
So and just like you, Jeremy, I actually didn't. I got out of bed in the middle of the night, but instead of getting up early like I normally do, I barely made it till like 8. Got up at like 8 o'clock this morning, which for me is like an eternity of sleep. So you were up late watching the PWCC auction, if I remember. Is that correct?
Well, that's actually going to be tonight. I'll be doing that
tonight. Okay. So is there anything interesting that you're monitoring in that auction tonight?
That's a good question. Yeah, there's lots of interesting. They have 219 cards going off tonight in the premiere. So there's I went through last night and kind of favorited a whole bunch of them that I want to be focusing on tonight. And Adam Gray, the Real 27 guy, will be joining me. He actually suggested that we do a top 5 intriguing auctions sort of segment, if you will, or a theme. So I was working on coming up with things that I thought were interesting. He'll be doing, but that'll be fun. They've got lots going on.
And Adam Gray is the basketball guy, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he's the editor of the basketball cards.
He is really good.
Yeah. And I apologize for us starting a little bit late, everybody. Just when you have multiple hosts, you got to get that login information. So, but Drew to the rescue. So thank you, Drew, for sending the code along. And here we are. So we have a couple quick comments. Logan Ward, did Uncle Rich break the internet? Yes, it was Rich's fault. Thank you, Logan, for properly assigning blame. Chad, good morning to you. Happy football. Happy Saturday football. And what does Rex say? Good morning from New Buffalo. You're on the big screen here at the shop, as always. Good morning, Rex. Hope you have a great day at the shop.
By the way, my alma mater actually played a football game last night.
And how'd they do?
They shut out number 25, and I think it's Division 2 or whatever they currently call FCS or whatever the new term is. 25 Dartmouth, 19-0 to go to 5-1 themselves. So yay, Columbia Lions.
Congratulations.
Of course, they won losses to the real class of the Ivy Leagues, the Princeton Tigers. But I'll take 5-1. Considering I lived through a 50-game losing streak in the 80s, I'll take any winning season.
Good morning, Joe Perot. So, Chris, why don't you give us that report you were just telling us about before about the Chantilly show that you attended?
Yes, I went to the Chantilly show yesterday, and you could see things are a little bit different. There was a definite new money presence at this card show. Lots of dealers that I hadn't seen before, selling lots of slab basketball and slab football and retail boxes, those kind of people. But, a lot of the old timers were there. The dollar box, the guy I call the dollar box of doom guy was there. Is a guy named Shandy. He's from the Carolinas. He's been setting up there for decades. And I think he used to have a card shop somewhere in like the Greensboro, Winston-Salem area. I don't know where he gets his stuff. I don't care where he gets his stuff. I don't care if it's hot, but his dollar boxes and $3 boxes are just worth the drive going out wherever he sets up. And he mostly sets up in like the Mid-Atlantic area, like the Carolinas. I think Chantilly's about as far north as he goes, but it's a good fun time.
Did you pick anything up? Did you do any buying, selling, trading?
I bought something that I haven't bought since before COVID. Top loaders. I actually found a guy that had top loaders. Forget this, $4 a pack.
Cheap.
And they're good ones. They're BCWs, not the no-name ones. So, I mean, for the longest time, and I think we can maybe segue into another topic we can get to, but because of supply chain issues, you couldn't find a pack of top loaders for anything less than like $6 or $7 for the last year. So thankfully, maybe the supply of top loaders is starting to trickle in, and maybe we'll get back to paying a reasonable price of $2.50 to $3 for the standard.
What was the energy like?
packets
What was
out
the
there.
energy like in the showroom? How were people saying their show was? How did it make you feel the hobby was trending up, trending down, staying the same?
I think compared to the last show, in the last show, they changed the pricing structure for Friday. It used to be that for the Chantilly show, it was $5 to get in on Friday, $10 to get in on Saturday and Sunday, and the 3-day pass was $20. With the last show, they changed it so that it was Saturday and Sunday were still $10 to get in, but Friday they had a special sneak preview ticket where you can get in at 2:00 on Friday for $25. And then after 5, it was 10. And at that show, a lot of dealers were complaining about there was basically nobody there from 2 to 5. And so for this show, they kind of adjusted the hours a little bit. They kept the $25 sneak preview, but it was only from 1 to 3 for 2 hours. And from 3 until 8, it was $10 to get in. And still, there were a lot of complaints about that. But you know, when I stepped onto the floor like 5 minutes after 3, and it's pretty well attended. They kind of reconfigured the floor so that all of the autographs were now not off to the left of the hall, but toward the back. So they were able to open up that left side of the hall for new tables. But again, it's still not the full hall that it used to be. So because they took the back end away for autographs. But
Rich, what you got?
A lot of the familiar faces were there. The longtime dealers, were there.
I'll let Chris finish.
Yeah,
Chris, as a long-time promoter myself, that makes sense. What Joe is doing there. I mean, Kyle, in a sense, on Thursday night in Dallas, his only VIPs can come in, and you're paying $45 for the VIP. I think it's $45.50, whatever it is. But you cannot get in on a general admission on Thursday night. So you have 3-4 hours to shop, and then you have 2 extra hours to shop Friday morning before everybody comes in the door, and you're paying a little extra for the privilege. And way back in the day, my old friend Mike Gordon, when he had the Tuesday night Parsippany show in New Jersey, and you're going to laugh when I say this, when Beanie Babies were on fire and everybody was making money with Beanie Babies, to let people walk in early, what he would do, he says, I'll let you walk in early. You just bought a table. And what he meant by that is you're paying for a table to walk in early. And he'd get 4 or 5 people who would do that because they were making enough money from the Beanie Babies to walk in early. You know, a couple times I went early when I had flights to catch, and we had a little back and forth for fun, but he never charged me that, but because he knew why I was there and what I was walking around for. But there is a premium to walk around early. That to me, yes, that favors as Chris would say, the high level dealers and the newer guys. But there's and I'm a big fan of everybody should pay the same amount. But if you look at it from a business purpose, you charge more to get the early access. That's why at the National, Jeremy, you went to the National, you were set up this year as a dealer, correct?
I had a small display. I had a table.
But when I say you came as a part of a booth, so you had right to be there early.
Yeah.
People pay extra for those Tuesday badges to get into the National just so they can walk around and shop and scoop up stuff before other people do. Is it perfect? No, but if you're looking at it in a business level, and the National sells VIP tickets, it gets you in a little bit early each day. It gets you in early on Wednesday. And then the super VIPs, you get the autograph tickets if you so want to. Look at it on a business level. And if you look at it as a business level, it makes sense.
And I do kind of get that, but I think $25 just for 2 or 3 hours of extra floor time, especially for a show that had never done this before, and especially at a show where, unlike at the National, you don't get anything extra, like promo cards or coupons or whatever. It's a little excessive, I think. I mean,
I'm not responsible for Joe's prices, but I will tell you that that's the logical reason behind it. Maybe he tweaks the price a little, but I'm not opposed to the concept in terms of the business level.
But I think $25 as opposed to $10 is a little excessive. And I think the floor traffic, from what I understand, showed.
Okay. Well, we got Logan's right now at the Mid-South Card Show, and he says it's not as busy as it was a few months ago. Curious to hear his thoughts on all that, but hopefully he's actually pounding the floor versus calling into this show. But Logan, feel free as always. Mark Hoyle says good morning to you, Rich. Say good morning.
Good morning, Mark. Mark, and my condolences.
No morning for us. Jeez.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. Victor in the house. Good morning, Victor. Happy Saturday and weekend to you, Nathan Retta. And Theodore, do you ever think there will be self-regulation? What's that in reference to, do you think?
Yeah.
Okay, like for example, my father was a lifelong member of the ASDA, American Stamp Dealers Association, because he was a vest pocket dealer. And he joined that, and we would go to the stamp shows in New York when I was very young, and he could get free admission, and we would get stuff from because I was a kid, from the ASDA booth. You know, they love giving kids stuff, even then, you know, in the 1960s. So that's what he's talking about. Will there be, let's say, the, you know, car dealers association, sports car dealer association? We've had some efforts in the 90s. And that's
a whole new topic, really. Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's something that I'm sure there's people thinking about it. But how do you actually enforce it? Like, who's gonna actually be feel compelled to have to pay the membership dues?
It's a really good idea. I mean, on one level, because you end up with a code of ethics. You end up with, and then you also have a group. And that was in the 90s, that was the idea of NASDAQ or whatever they called that group, and SCIA, to have like a group where they could, you know, have a group to negotiate with card companies to, like, in those days. And I remember the 80s, you would send a check into Topps in November to get stuff in April. You know, they would hold your money for 6 months. God knows how much money they made, you know, all these card companies made on the float in those days. You know, you send a check for 350 cases of 89 Fleer sets, and it's $75,000. And if you don't, you know, you're waiting 6 months. Well, if they're putting that money into an interest-bearing account and you're not the only one getting it, they're getting a decent money just on the interest that they're getting in the interest account. So that was part of the thing going on. And this is not, and I want to phrase this correctly, but when we saw the news about Upper Deck this week, that's what I went back to thinking. Has Upper Deck collected money for Series 1 already? Because now they've had to push it back to December, and they've had to cancel 2 products. Well, the products they canceled, if you paid for it in advance, they're going to send you a refund.
Yeah.
But what's going to happen with Series 1? I mean, I feel sorry because I know that's their flagship product.
I really wonder about that. And I don't think we know the answer to this, but, you know, in B2B, you pretty much you have some sort of terms, and a lot of times you don't pay until you receive, or you pay 90 days after. You know, I understand people going into a hobby shop puts down their money to the LCS, and the LCS even puts down their money sometimes, I believe, to the distributor, at least up here in Canada. But I don't know that the distributor is paying ahead to Upper Deck without getting the product first. So I think it's I don't see that being a problem for Upper. Although in the U.S. where there's more direct, it could definitely be something happening there. But that was the topic that we were going to talk about. That was on a list, just the fact that Upper Deck did. Not only have they had to postpone the release date of some products, they've also had to outright cancel some hockey products, including Upper Deck Ice, Upper Deck Trilogy, which have been mainstays on their brand calendar since 2005. And Ice, I think, maybe even before that. So those products are 16 years in the of history, and now there's going to be this gap unless they find a way to plug those cards into future products as other hits or something. But that's what interests me the most, guys, is that if you're a collector of either of that brand, if you're a loyal collector of either of those brands year over year, now you're going to have a hole. Are you going to want to collect it next year, or are you going to say, well, I'm going to find something else, I'm going to stop those collections and move forward? And are those could the question I really ask is, could the cancellation of a product for 1 year, outside of everything being canceled because of a strike or something, could that kill a brand moving forward? Or is the hobby going to be patient and understanding enough to and not so, how some of us collectors, we can be very, very true and loyal to a brand to the point where if it doesn't show up one time, that could be the end of it for us. So how are collectors going to respond to that? Never mind the fact that and the reasons why they're delayed and canceled. I think that's just simply supply chain for them and time at the printers, which is a really easy answer, and I believe that to be the case. How are hobbyists guys going to respond to their favorite brand no longer coming out and the big rookie not having that big card in this year?
I really can't think of a brand, at least in baseball, that had a 1 year hiatus like this. I can think of other brands that have been brought back after like maybe 10 or 15 years, like Topps Gold Label, for example.
Chris, 2001 Donruss.
Yeah, so what happens though? So if there hasn't been one, guys, or it doesn't matter, we don't have to list them off, but if there isn't,
I can tell you from history on 2001 Donruss. Because that was a mainstay brand from 81 to 98. And when Pinnacle went under in 98, there was no Donruss for 2 years. Donruss comes back in 2001 when Donruss Leaf Playoff returns. And the product's a huge hit. But I was talking to a lot of dealers at the time, and a lot of the traditional customers opened the box and said, I'm done with Donruss. And the reason was the rookies were one per box.
Yeah.
Where people had been used to being able to get the set, all of a sudden they could not get the complete set anymore because it would take you the equivalent of 50 boxes to get a set. Unless you decided you wanted to chase each rookie. And of course, in 2001, you had Pujols and Ichiro. So you have two very expensive cards to chase down. So all of a sudden, a great idea, and it was a great product, but I wrote, and there were people who got really upset at the time about how they destroyed people who had a history of the 18 years of Donruss. And if they had not done that, and if they had done like 251 and 251A or something like that for an autographed parallel, they still would have been able to service people to complete a set. And everybody would have been happy and gone on with their lives. But they basically ended people. But there were a ton of people who were thrilled, hey, we're going to get Donruss back. And they went away. And it really hurt them, not just in 2001, but for the next few years. It's that type of issue was one of the reasons, and not being really good at the big box retail chains, why in 2006, when MLB cut back from 3 licenses to 2, why DLP was the odd man out. Mm-hmm. And it was Topps and Upper Deck. And history will repeat itself. People will understand why Ice and Trilogy miss a year. And as long as they come back next year, they understand why. This has been a goofy year. We've talked about the printing press issues in the past on this show. People will understand as long as it comes back the same way it was.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. As long as they don't change the configuration too much so that it alienates the old loyalists from before. And they bring it back that way. That makes sense to me, Rich. It does. And, you said like in the example you gave, you had competing companies. Now there's just going to be competing products, and Upper Deck is still going to put out other products. I think that to get, to make sure they could put out something, they had to cancel a few. And so it'll be interesting, and it'll be too bad for the people who are loyal to those brands. But, I think Upper Deck Ice and Trilogy, I don't know where they rank overall for those companies, for Upper Deck, in terms of sellout and all that. But personally, not too sad to see Trilogy go. Not my favorite product from an aesthetics perspective. Upper Deck Ice, beautiful year over year, tons of brand equity, and one that I think the hobby will miss. We got some comments coming through. Unless anything else on that, guys. Okay. So
how is this going to affect
what happened? Why the cancellation? So again, it's just capacity at the printers has been the understanding that I've heard from people at Upper Deck, which is just unfortunate. A couple great comments. Tom, do you think supply chain issues that have slowed the hobby down are actually a good thing? Would the printing presses be running continuously? Well, they are running continuously by all the card companies for all the products and all the kind of the others, the F1s and the soccers and all that. But Chris, you want to jump in with something?
Yeah,
no, you're good.
How is this going to affect Series 1? Because
it's delayed.
We have the
December.
Toronto Expo coming up in a couple of weeks, which I'm going to be going to. I don't know if you're going to it, Jeremy. But that Toronto show in November is timed for the release of Series 1. And that show is just like a 3-day Series 1 love fest. And with it being delayed until December, what's that show going to be like in a couple of weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I am very challenged to pin the success of a show on the release of one brand. I mean, you're right. It's been a big release at Expo for the past 15 years. It is timed for it. You're right, but it's going to be delayed to the end of December, I believe, this year, Series 1. And I mean, as a vendor at the show, I'm thrilled because I don't sell wax. So there's going to be all that money now can be diverted towards other items in the room. So great for the vendors who are, singles dealers like myself. And yes, Chris, I will be there set up. I haven't missed one in 15 years as a vendor. So I'm very excited for November at the Expo in Toronto. It's gonna be a great show. I'm pumped. It's not the biggest year for rookies anyway. There is that kid out of Montreal, Cole Caulfield, who when that product does come out, it's going to be hot because he's a Montreal Canadiens, and Montreal Canadiens fans are rabid and they love their prospects. Even if they don't turn out to be anything, they still buy them up like they're going hungry. So it's going to be it'll be great when it does come out. The Spring Expo in Toronto in May should be very, very exciting. But I'm excited for this show, the Expo in November, Chris, and we'll see you there, I'm sure. But I think it's going to be still a fantastic show.
And to backtrack on one thing about Shandy used to set up at most nationals. And one time on Saturday, he usually on Sunday lowers like his 50-cent box to a quarter. Well, in 2019, he did that on Saturday. And I said, Jim, to Dr. Beckett, come here. And he took one look and he never left the table for the rest of the day once he got there. And he goes, oh, this is. He literally, just like he did at a certain table, he just spent all day at the table. And it was very funny because about every hour on the hour, I would find somebody who wanted to meet him. So I would bring them over. And so I asked him later, it's just a funny story. How did the person sitting next to you react when they kept meeting people? Did he ever ask you anything? He says, yeah, the person next to me only asked, are you done with this box yet?
Yeah.
Yeah, Shandy brought a lot of quarter boxes, a lot more than he normally does.
Yeah, he didn't do the national.
I just didn't have the time to just pick through all that. I mean, like a whole table, double stacked with quarter boxes.
I don't think he did the national this year, so he had really fresh inventory in there.
We have a caller, guys. Adam from Heroes for Sale. We have a caller, not a video caller, just a caller. Adam, what's going on? Welcome to the show this morning.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
We can. Oh, you just made it. I almost took you out. You just made it.
Perfect. Yeah. Sorry.
What's going on?
Service is kind of a little bit scratchy. Nothing. So I'm just interested. I know you guys were just talking about hockey. So why do you think that? So Fanatics obviously taking over a lot of the licenses for every sport. Why do you think that hockey has sort of, or have they been holding out, or do you think that Fanatics ends up taking the hockey license, or what do you think the reason that hockey hasn't sort of jumped the ship and gone over to Fanatics like the other sports have?
Like, why is hockey unscathed in all this so far? That's Adam. That I think it's a really good question. I don't know the answer to that, and but I'll tell you one thing. I love Upper Deck's cards. I love the card. I just love the quality and the looks and the design of their cards. Not everything, but most of it. And so when I heard about this news, I was very happy that Upper Deck remained unscathed. I was also happy that Upper Deck hired Arena Designs. I thought we got lucky twice there as hockey collectors. But the question's a great one. I don't know. Rich, do you have any sort of thoughts on how they remained unscathed?
One, we're talking about Upper Deck. I know that Adam here is a new host at Hobby Hotline. So is Chris Carlin from Upper Deck, a new host, a new guest host. So I think we can definitely get his take on it whenever he is scheduled to come on next. Also, if you remember when Target and Walmart had to start putting holds on stuff, it's baseball, football, and basketball were the products, and I forgot what else, but hockey was allowed to remain sitting on the shelf. So, obviously it was not flying off the shelves in the big box retail stores the same way that the other three sports are. And if that's any indication, that's one of the reasons, I think Ian posted popularity, and I think he's right. Hockey has a great audience, but it's a fanatical, smaller audience than the other three sports.
If you were to rank the hobby sports in the hobby, baseball, football, basketball are 1A, 1B, 1C. Hockey is a distant fourth, maybe even fifth now to soccer.
Yeah, I think you're right.
At least in this country.
I think
Canada, it's a little different.
Football's not in the ones. I think it's like baseball, basketball are up there. Football's like number 2. Yeah. Soccer and then hockey and then F1, NASCAR, all the other stuff. I think that's about right for sure. We got Logan. Hey Uncle Rich. Popular, lots of different comments coming. We need the rated rookies. Adam left us. Thank you for calling in, Adam.
Yes, thank you.
And
welcome to the Hobby Hotline team too.
Good morning, John. Chandy Greenhold. Was that something you were talking about, Rich?
Yes, that's what Chris and I were talking about. That's who Chris and I were talking about. And by the way, Papa John is one of the national promoters. So hi, Papa John.
Papa John. Good morning, Papa John. Welcome to the show. Okay, well, yeah, it's gonna be an interesting balance of the year for hockey. The one thing though is maybe that hockey could maybe be picked up cheap right now because of all those what was just discussed. It's the least popular in the hobby of the major licenses, but they've got this new deal with TNT. I'm hearing that, and this is maybe wishful thinking, but I've heard from some sources that are not biased like I would be, that hockey in the US is going to go through a growth phase because of these new TV deals. If that's the case, maybe hockey knows this and is holding out for more. Maybe Fanatics doesn't realize it. I find that hard to believe that they wouldn't know what's going on in the whole landscape. So, who knows what's going on there?
Or maybe the NHL just likes what it has in Upper Deck too.
Yeah, maybe, but I can't imagine money not talking to any of these leagues and player associations. So
no.
And just remember, the NHL is not just on TNT, but they're on ESPN now. And once you have the ESPN machine behind you, that's even more major than TNT. TNT, really becoming a sports network too. But that is, you get ESPN behind you with all of Disney behind it. That is quite a popularity boost. And switching on hockey for a second, I don't know how the market is currently, but I still think that if you're buying 50s and 60s, nice condition, graded hockey cards, there is significant room for growth, especially among the biggest names, but even among the middle names.
Yeah.
There's a ton of Hall of Famers that are probably very reasonably priced in the 50s and 60s and even into the 70s.
Well, Sports Cards Detour Diego has joined the hockey viewership. So I'd like to welcome you to the hockey viewership. Sports Cards, that's awesome. I like watching it myself. Adam Palmer, just thank you for dropping in. Yakov says hockey versus soccer is I agree. Hockey versus soccer is what is really the battle for fourth.
It's the battle for number 4 now. Yeah.
If you look at what's out at card shows, whether it's the National, the Dallas show, which I haven't been to, the Chantilly, anywhere in the U.S. really, I think you're going to see more soccer than hockey right now, and maybe even in Canada. I mean, hockey is obviously number 1 up here, but I was at a day show in Calgary back in July, and I couldn't believe how little hockey there was compared to historical years and shows versus basketball and soccer. The tables were covered in basketball and soccer. So, we'll see what comes of it for sure. But I'm here, your comment, Rich, about the vintage hockey, I'm kind of wondering if it's on ESPN and TNT, are people going to be focusing on the current players that are making the highlights? Why do you think, Rich, that there's room in the vintage? If I would actually think that they're going to be seeing the modern players, the Connor McDavid, doing his pumps after all his goals, Alex Ovechkin chasing Gretzky's all-time goals record, scoring at a high pace this year already. So why do you think they're going to transition maybe from watching modern day players to vintage?
I think we might get both, actually. That's a great point, Jeremy. I think we'll get both. We will get the new people. The Ovechkin chase is a great story.
Yeah.
And it's a multi-year story.
Right.
And that makes it really cool. But there's so little hockey compared to baseball and even football of that time that you will get enough contrarians saying, let me go back, or let me go to the roots. And then they will discover this stuff's not out there, and if it's not out there, then it becomes a chase-worthy item. And that's why I think there's room in hockey for both old and new. And I appreciate you bringing that up, because I think you're dead on. I didn't even think about it that way, because the modern hockey has great stories. I mean, the big players of today are wonderful. I mean, we have a guy here in Texas. I think it's Taylor Seguin. He's been on 6 All-Star teams, and he's 29 years old. That's pretty good. Yeah. And so he's probably the second best player ever in Dallas after Mike Modano, but nobody really cares. I go to the show. Remember, I'm a vendor at the show, so I get to hear what people are asking for. I almost never get anybody asking for hockey, but I sure as heck get people asking for soccer. Yeah.
That's the theme of the hobby right now. And does that mean, so if hockey does grow, are we in an opportunity window right now? And I'm here, in a lot of chats I'm hearing that sentiment, and I'm hearing it coming from people who have influence. I'm hearing some things starting there and trickling their way down. So who knows? As a hockey guy, I'm happy to hear it, but at the same time, I don't want to get priced out of all the cards that are still on my want list. So,
okay. And I want to apologize. I thought it was your father, John. That's his son, JB.
Well, hello, JB. Great to have you for sure with us. For sure. Scott Collects, how you doing? Good morning. Ian Undercover loves getting my PSA 10 Patrick Waugh cards at steal prices. Yeah, no doubt. Sports says, my story is the dynamic duo of McDavid and Draisaitl going to a championship. I want to stop on this for 1 second, guys. And I know this. We just lost Chris temporarily. So sorry for making this a hockey show, considering we're saying how small the market is. But it's important because in my opinion, Rich, I've always said that, Crosby is the guy to buy because he's got cups, he's got individual awards, he's been the face of the sport for so long. He's just an easy guy to collect. Now, Connor McDavid, and the comparison is always Crosby versus McDavid. The thing with Connor McDavid, he's got no championships. He's got some personal accolades, but no championships. And Edmonton doesn't look like they're poised to win a championship, or they haven't. Now, I've sort of started to change my view on that, Rich. My thought now is that Connor McDavid might be good enough, to take the Oilers right through to win a Stanley Cup. It doesn't matter how bad their defense is. Doesn't matter how marginal their goaltending is. If you score 6 goals a game, you're going to win the Stanley Cup. And so I think that I now am thinking that Connor McDavid might be good enough to win a cup in Edmonton, which is a good place for him to win one, and a good place for him to win one for the people that own his cards, because Edmonton is such a big market behind Toronto and Montreal. Up here in Canada, Edmonton's the 3rd biggest market for collecting. So if he does win a cup, and if enough people feel that way like I do, then his cards are not overpriced, and there's not, and any championships that are built in are deserved to be built in. So I don't, I've changed my tune very recently on that. And as Sports Cards Detour says, Draisaitl, who because maybe some people don't know about him, Draisaitl is actually he's a superstar on his own. Never mind that he plays on the Oilers with McDavid. So McDavid is not a one-man show. So I'm bullish. I'm bullish on, and I have some key McDavid cards, full transparency, but I'm still bullish on it now. More bullish than I was before, Rich.
Everything old is new again. I mean, tell me, were the 80s Edmonton Oilers known for defense?
No, well, they had Paul Coffey. I mean, although he was a very offensive,
he was very offensive defensive.
He was like a Bobby Orr.
And they did have some stay-at-home defensemen too, just like the Bruins did during the Bobby Orr era. Bobby Orr was paired with Dallas Smith, who was the ultimate stay-at-home defenseman.
Yeah.
So as long as you have some of that, but everything old is new again. I mean, we love the 80s Edmonton Oilers. I actually saw them a couple times, in New York, New Jersey in the 80s. I went to a couple of the games. It was really fun. I mean, watching a young Gretzky in person is just an amazing experience.
100%. And Connor McDavid, it's the same thing with him now. People go to, he sells tickets, and deservedly so. He is worth the price of admission. And again, he's on the number one rivalry for my team is him and his team. So it's not like I'm excited to see him win a cup up there. That would actually ruin, that'd be very bad for my team and our fans to see them win more cups before we do.
But there's something good about a Canadian team winning a Stanley Cup. What was the last one? 93 with the Canadians?
I believe so.
I mean, we haven't had a Canadian, hockey is the de facto national sport of Canada. And I say that because actually lacrosse is the official national sport of Canada. Right. By the way, lacrosse cards are getting popular in this country too on a slow, very slow upward climb, but that's a different subject for
lacrosse and cricket, right? Theo says that Edmonton is 5-0. They beat the Vegas Golden Knights last night. See there, they can win by scoring goals. Daniel, good morning to you. And Theo says you need the Rangers, Detroit, Chicago, Philly to be relevant again with a superstar. I think for the sport to grow. And, you could add LA onto that list as well, I would think. But, it comes down to original 6 teams that do have the deepest fan bases in the U.S., being, the Rangers, the Blackhawks, the Red Wings, and the Bruins, right? Any of those teams win a cup or have a superstar. But, I also wonder to what extent is it important for one of the southern teams to have a superstar and become like a Florida or an Arizona or a California team, one of the other ones?
I would love to have.
Well, aren't the defending champions Tampa Bay?
Yeah, good point. That they are, and that hasn't really. Although when you watch the games in the playoffs, the fans are out. It's just a sea of fans outside the arena there. So, maybe Tampa Bay fans aren't card collectors.
I will tell you that when the Stars a couple years ago during the pandemic were making their push towards the cup and they got to the finals, and they opened up to a limited number of fans the American Airlines Arena. It was sold out and then some. For whatever they could get in, there were people clamoring for tickets. When you're a hockey fan, you truly are a fanatic. I mean, Rob Veras would tell me in the 90s. Rob Veras, by the way, for those who don't know, is owner of Burbank Cards and has somewhere between 40 and 60 million individual cards for sale. I don't know the exact number. And he would say, hockey, I have the most intense collectors for. They're not as many, but I do just as well as hockey because they are so focused.
Yeah.
And they, Rock Vera sells a lot of cards at $0.25 and 50 cents. I guarantee you now that there's going to be a full normal season, he is going to have a kick butt year selling hockey cards.
You know what, Rich? You make a good point because I've had this discussion recently too. When you talk about the stability of the hobby, I would argue that behind baseball, hockey is probably the safest because the fans are so loyal and passionate, and not as many sort of new collectors came in and latched onto hockey as to basketball. So if you're skeptical about the future of the hobby, and how what collector base is sort of the most has the strongest foundation, I think hockey's right up there with baseball. On a smaller scale, of course, and then you've got basketball, football. Football fans love football more than they love cards. I think card collectors like football cards, but hockey fans and card collectors are. You go up to you come up to the Expo in Toronto, you're going to see all sports, and there's going to be tons of baseball and basketball there, some football, and lots of hockey, and you're going to see that the fan base is strong, it's loyal, and it's not going to go anywhere.
Chris, did you say you were going to the Expo?
Yes.
Have you ever been there before?
Yeah, I've gone maybe 3 times before. So. Okay,
I haven't gone in about 25 years. But I went the second time I went, we had begun the almanac at Beckett, and word got around the show that I was looking for baseball stuff for the almanac. And if you've ever noticed, we have a lot of 96, 97 Blue Jays stuff in the almanac because the dealers all said, Rich, I have this for you. The word got around what I was doing. Rich, I have this for you. Rich, I have this for you. And it was maybe baseball was 10% of the total stuff at the Expo. But I will tell you that I found some really cool baseball oddball stuff, in those days at the Expo. And I'm sure there were plenty of normal stuff, but I didn't need for any purpose the O-Pee-Chee singles at the time.
Can I ask you something about that? About the Toronto show of 25 years ago?
Sure.
Was Meat Guy there?
I don't remember anybody.
You don't remember Meat Guy? This guy that sells like pepperoni sticks and sausages.
He's been there for decades.
That memory, yeah. I have no idea. I usually remember food, but that one I can't tell you.
Let's
just smell the meat just wafting.
Let's change topics before we lose any more viewers, guys. Let's move over to the NBA releasing their 75 best player of all time list. I think we got to go to basketball here. So yeah. NBA released their top 75 players of all time. Rich, did you notice any notable snubs at all?
I didn't really notice. I really haven't looked at the list, but I will tell you the NBA does a really good job. I remember as part of the 50th anniversary celebration, I think all but maybe one of the players was still living at the time. Yeah, and I think they did an amazing, my friend Joey Casey did this amazing poster that he got signed of all 50 players. I think the only player that wasn't living at the time was Pistol Pete Maravich.
Yeah.
So it's the NBA is going to do it right. And some of the guys on the list you see on TV, Barkley, Reggie Miller, Shaq, obviously Jordan's going to be on there, and so these guys still have an attachment to the game. And anybody who has an attachment to the game like that is really something that keeps it interesting, not just for yesterday's fans, but for today's fans. Because now you're going to look and say, wait, Charles Barkley, he was really that good. We look at Charles Barkley as an announcer, but when you look at Charles Barkley, I personally think in the Jordan era is the second most popular basketball player. And I'm only speaking from my perspective, but I know when people go through my cheaper basketball stuff, if they don't buy Jordan, if they don't look for Jordan, they look for Barkley. That's literally, Barkley's above Dirk in terms of interest here in Dallas, which is just a stunning thing.
So Klay Thompson is one of the guys who didn't make the list. I know some people think that could be a bit of an issue. I believe Joe Dumars. I'm just kind of going through what a few that I've heard that have been that people have made cases for. Thoughts on either of those guys? Not Dwight Howard not making the list.
Kyrie not
Another
making
one.
it.
Yeah.
Well, I will tell you, Joe Dumars was a great player. I mean, to me, Joe Dumars is worthy of the list. But I'm looking at the list right now, and who would you take off to put Dumars on? I mean, it's literally a trade. At some point, would you trade X for Y? And I mean, I'm looking at the list real quickly, and they're honoring both the players of the past and the players of today, so to speak. I remember it was a big thing 50 years ago when they put Shaq on because they said, oh, his career hasn't developed enough. I mean, to
he
me,
was only in the league for what, 5 years?
5 years, but he had already been
anyway.
How does this list, guys, how do you find this? What do you think this list does for the hobby? Let's bring it back to cards for a second. What does being on this list mean for the cards of the player? And what does not being on the list mean for the cards of the player? Who wants to start? Rich?
Okay. I think it means something for – I'll compare this to baseball for a second. People used to say, well, I'm buying his cards because when he goes to the Hall of Fame, his prices are going to go up. Well, if you have a guy who's a lock for the Hall of Fame, a la Derek Jeter, nothing happens to his prices of his cards when he gets into the Hall of Fame. But in the 80s, when George Kell made the Hall of Fame, all of a sudden his cards took a major leap up because all of a sudden now he's a Hall of Famer. Red Schoendienst in 90 and 91 did the same thing. So I think it's the same thing. If it's something a little bit unexpected, and I'm looking at the comments and I am already seeing people, mentioning other people as well. So there's always going to be a group, no matter how many people you put on, there's always somebody left off. I mean,
Definitely.
Bernard King, I grew up as a Knicks fan. Bernard King was amazing. And if he hadn't have suffered that injury that kept him out for 2 years, he might be a top 30 player.
Yeah.
So Alex English, he ended his career with the Mavs. I remember watching Alex English because I had just moved down here. There's so many people, and if it brings interest to that era, it's a good thing. I'm an ABA fan. There were some great ABA players that are in the Hall of Fame that I guarantee aren't on their list for various reasons, such as their best years were in the ABA. But anything that brings interest to both old and new, I'm a big fan of.
So, appreciate that, Rich. Here's a comment from Theo a few minutes ago. He says, Lakers not looking good, not good for LeBron collectors. So even being on the list as one of the top 2 or 3 or one in some people's opinion of all time, how let's just sort of segue a little bit here to, I find it challenging to think that a player like LeBron, that his cards, and I shouldn't say I find it challenging. It's just, I find it humorous almost that you can start the season not very well as a team, and that someone who is going to go down as one of the top, 5 basketball players of all time, and a lot of people would argue higher than that their cards could be negatively affected by, the first 3 or 4 games of a season. So what do you think? What do you think, guy? I mean, is that just because the hobby is so fickle and it's what have you done for me lately and hero to zero and all this? What do you think? Is the hobby too fickle? Rich, you got a ton of experience. You've been around a while. You've seen it happen. Is this going to hurt his cards? And if it does, how long until people realize that, hey, it was only
Chris was saying no immediately.
Chris, what do you think, man?
Is there any evidence of LeBron cards going down in the last week, 2 weeks? Any?
Is that rhetorical? Because I haven't been following the last.
Neither have I. However, LeBron,
I don't think so.
And if there is a softening, I guarantee you this, as Jeremy said, he's a Mount Rushmore player. And I mean, if there's a dip in a Mount Rushmore player, what's the first thing you should do?
Bye.
Because he's, at the end of the day, he's going to be a top 3, top 5 player. I mean, my God, if there's a dip, you've got to take advantage of it. I mean, sometimes there's a run up on certain people, and then you buy it when it comes back down. We've had that with people like Lou Alcindor / Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, But if there's a dip, you buy the dip, especially when it's definitely a blue chip stock. And the thing about LeBron James, he's never done anything really stupid on a personal level. Have you ever heard of him get into trouble in any way? He's still seeing this, he's still basically living with the same woman he lived with, when he graduated high school.
Yeah.
They've been together 20 years. There is something to be said for, his good works in the community. How many schools has he funded? What has he done for the community?
Yeah.
You've never heard anything bad on a personal level about LeBron James. You may not always like everything he says, but as a human being, he's been pretty damn good.
I agree, Rich. I think that school funding that school takes him to a whole other level for just his iconicism and relevance in society moving forward and to cult. Like he's definitely you have as you let out there, Rich. Opportunity, not really a threat to the long-term viability of his cards. I don't think. I apologize. The guys are here to clean my vents in my house, and they're early. They were supposed to come when the show ended, and they're already here. And my wife let them in, so apologize if you're hearing any of that in the background. That's okay.
But that's my point. Buy the dip on the Mount Rushmore. If there's ever a dip, buy the dip on the Mount. I remember the 52 mantle. I was going to say mantle rookie, but it's not the mantle rookie. The 52 mantle exploded to $3,000 about 1980. Enough of them came out in the marketplace 2 years later, you could buy them at $500.
Right.
Man, I wish I had a lot of $500 bills lying around in those days. I would never have to work again.
Yeah. So look at Theo's comment right here saying winning does help card values. I think we agree on that. Look at Jordan Alvarez, sold a bunch last night. Look at Correa. People hated him 8 months ago. His cards have gone up a lot. So yeah.
But these aren't also LeBron James level type players either.
But I agreed there too. But Theo's comment does speak to just how reactive the hobby can be, and especially in the age of fantasy football and all the media on sports now. It's really a player's cards will go up the day of. If you're someone who has a ton of cards listed on eBay or ComC at fixed prices, and a player has a great night, you got to be on the ball and get in there and either let them go cheap or increase the prices, or just be happy that they sold in the first place, because you never know. These things are so cyclical, and they can be very temporary rises in players' attractiveness and to the degree they're pursued by the hobby, for sure.
Yeah, and one thing to remember is there's a difference between a younger, what I'll call investable player, and a Mount Rushmore player, and a guy that's already established. Alvarez and Correa, they're not that old. Alvarez was a 2020 Topps rookie, if I remember correctly. Correa has had cards for a while, but I think he's only 26 or 27. He's still fairly young. I hear, the guys talking with Theodore just talked about buying Brian Harper. Brian Harper had a great year this year. And I think we think he's been around forever. But remember, he came to the majors at age 19. He's still under 30 years old. Yeah. So when you're dealing with people who have not finished when I say finished their career, when their numbers are already established, you've got room. And if somebody really has a good thing, it's time to go. I wonder, even if it's a 1 or 2 day wonder, when Turner hit 3 homers for the Dodgers the other night, did anybody just go and start buying his cards?
Yeah.
There it is. Harper's 28 years old. He's already got great career stats. He's the level of player he is. He's got 5 or 6 really good years left at the minimum.
Right. Game Time makes the comment, LeBron needs to stay away from Twitter. Other than that, no red flags. And I think that's an astute comment, right? Because he does get himself into some turmoil at times. If these guys would sort of stay away from religion and politics and pandemics, probably at this point too, maybe everything good that they're doing and speaking on the floor or the rink or the field would really be all they need to do to keep their collectors and the hobby happy. So the Dallas show, guys. Dallas show is coming up is it next weekend, Rich?
It is next weekend. I will tell you, my employer, ComC, will be set up there for the first time at a Dallas show in 4.5 years.
Wonderful.
We will have a corporate booth. I will also be accepting cards because the way the Dallas Card Show is set up, there's basically a side room of 100 tables, which is a pretty darn good show in itself. And I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be an interesting experience because it won't be my normal Dallas Card Show setup because I am ComC centric. I'm going to have my quarter cards with me. And so on that level, it'll be interesting to see what, if anybody, dives into or what they do. I mean, even though some of the inventory's been around for a while, it's been 2 or 3 years since anybody's looked at those cards.
So, Rich, any sort of early indication, even from talking to Kyle, as to what to expect for this show versus the last one?
Well, I will tell you that BGS is also setting up at the show. It's the first local show they've set up at it a long time. I guarantee you that I believe they're sold out. I haven't asked Kyle or Jerica recently about that, but there's a good anticipation in the air.
Yeah,
and I think it's been a couple months, and the July and August shows had a little bit of an issue because when Kyle scheduled them, there was no guarantee there was going to be a national.
Yeah.
So he did a logical business decision and said, if there's no guarantee there's going to be a national, I'll do it. And July ran into some competition. August was better than July. But I think having the national, I know at least one friend of mine I haven't seen in a long time is coming in to the show, and his name is Jim Bubba Bennett, and he's currently scheduled to be in the Starlight Room. So I know that there are still new people coming in, and I'm excited. And he says, I don't know, I'm in the side room. I said, well, Jim, I'm in the side room too. I think you'll really like it.
Jim Bubba Bennett, Papa Jim.
Papa Jim.
All right, guys. Well, we are at the top of the hour. I pretty much have a hard stop. So any final comments or questions or thoughts from the panel?
I enjoyed the hockey talk.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you guys for that. That was enjoyable for me as well.
One other comment I want to make.
Yeah.
2001 Donruss baseball is the worst baseball card set of the 21st century. Just wanted to get that off my chest.
Worse than 90 Donruss and Fleer?
Worse than what?
1990s Donruss and Fleer? Those yellow cards and those red cards?
Of this century.
Got it.
And I actually
spent 21 years trying to build this set, and I'm still, all those short printed, gimmicked up rookies did not do that product.
I also wanted to say, we didn't say anything bad about Upper Deck. We tried to be very fair, but it's not just Upper Deck that's had issues getting all their products out. Topps Big League, which is one of their affordable products, has not been released yet. At the beginning of the year, Topps announced there would be none of their 17 card, 15 card team sets that were in the retail stores and were a great accessible way for people to collect cards of their favorite team. So it's not just Upper Deck that's had issues. We can verify Topps has had some issues too. Yeah. And we know other products haven't come out on time. So to be totally fair to Upper Deck, we have to just assume that they're being extremely transparent, and they just don't have the printing press.
Well, we're willing to give Ultra Pro a pass on plastic shortages, but why wouldn't we give the card companies a pass on paper shortages or just capacity shortages at the printers? Because what a lot of people don't understand is that the card companies do not print the cards themselves. These things are outsourced to third-party vendors who are servicing other companies as well. So it's just
and a lot of these cards, like the ice cards that are printed on the acetate, those are probably made overseas as well. So that's probably another reason why ice was probably canceled.
And
I wasn't aware of that, but
you can walk to Panini's printer from my office. It's a long walk. It's probably a mile or so, but you can walk from my office to where Panini prints their cards.
That's the first I've ever heard about acetate cards being printed in Europe.
Well, I don't know where they are, but I'm just saying that they could be one of the reasons why.
Jeremy has that hard stop. We appreciate you. And now go take care of your vents.
All right, guys. Thank you. Thanks everybody for tuning in. And please note that Hobby Hotline has added a Tuesday show, I believe, starting next month, and added 8 new hosts as well. So tune in, follow the Twitter, follow the Instagram and all that, and the Facebook group, and stay tuned for that. Some great new hosts added to the roster. But guys, thank you so much. Everybody out there, thank you for tuning in. Scott Collects, appreciate you. Appreciate you, Detour, for tuning in tonight, and everybody else who was out there. We'll catch you all next week on Hobby Hotline.
All right.